Michiganders can be a superstitious bunch. We find all sorts of reasons to explain the world around us, sometimes pulling from science, sometimes tradition, and sometimes from our imaginations. What happens when we can't readily explain our experiences? And what happens when a ghost story gets out of hand? Do these legends stem entirely from fantasy? Or are people seeing things no one can truly explain?
I'm Krista K. Coburn.
And I'm Kay Gray.
Welcome to Haunted Mitten.
The thriving shipping trade in Michigan dates back centuries. The Great Lakes connect several major cities in both the US and Canada, such as Toronto, Buffalo, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee, and Chicago, each of which owes a great deal of their growth to being on the water. While they are called lakes, let's not forget the great part. It's not always easy sailing. Lake Michigan alone is often listed as one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world. And who can forget what happens to Lake Superior when the skies of November turn gloomy?
The song's a classic. Another classic is the story of the oldest ghost ship on the Great Lakes, Le Griffon, or the Griffin in English. Le Griffon is so famous that she was mentioned in the TV show Supernatural as an example of a ghost ship. If people watch that,
Hopefully
Wik-
not anymore. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry. Go on.
yeah, quite famous. So Wikipedia says that she was built by René Robert Cavelier sur de la Salle. La Salle, as most people probably know him, in 1679 in his quest to find the Northwest Passage to China and Japan, and was the largest sailing vessel on the Great Lakes up to that time. The exact size and construction of Le Griffon is not known, but many researchers believe she was a 45-ton bark. Her maiden voyage was August 7th, 1679.
There are many legends about Le Griffon and what happened to her. According to the book Haunted Heartland by Beth Scott and Michael Norman, the local Iroquois people didn't believe the ship capable of floating and supposedly made plans to burn it, but failed in their attempts. Also, LaSalle was not a fan of the Jesuit priests, who he thought were too friendly with the Iroquois, and mocked them in front of the Iroquois prophet Matiamek, who was converted to Christianity by the Jesuits. Matiamek then, quote unquote, cursed the ship, its builder LaSalle, and its blasphemous griffin talisman. Legends of Le Detroit, a book by Marie Carolyn Watson Hamlin, published in 1883, quotes Matiamek's curse thusly.
Great chief, you are too proud. You have shown contempt for the great spirit who rules all things, and you have set up an evil spirit on his throne. You seek the tribes of the West to trade with them and to destroy them with your cursed firewater. You sneer at the black gowns, the Jesuit priests, Anantio sent us. You have taught us to worship the Great Spirit and till the ground. But Matiamek, the prophet of his race, bids you beware. Darkness like a cloud is ready to envelop you. The Christian Indian's curse rests on you and on your great canoe. She will sink beneath the deep waters, and your blood shall stain the hands of those in whom you trusted.
LaSalle was eventually murdered by his own men, seemingly fulfilling Matiamek's curse.
It's quite a curse.
That's a really good curse. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it. Go. Yeah, do it.
Yeah, curse
These
that guy.
people have been nothing but nice, but okay, that's fine.
Yep. Um, and now for something completely different about this history. According to Marion Kuklo in her book Michigan Haunts and Hauntings, two priests, fathers Dolier and Galinet, I'm guessing on those, destroyed a sacred rock along the Detroit River. The tribespeople whose sacred rock it was gathered the rocks together in the river, and they turned it into a monster serpent, in quotes, that 10 years later pursued the griffin as it passed through, bringing about a terrible storm. Some say the water spirits conjured 10 years before, quote unquote, drove her relentlessly to her destruction. LaSalle was not on the ship when she was lost. He had traveled on toward Mexico on his quest. Again, according to Haunted Heartland, the last confirmed sighting was by LaSalle on September 18th, 1679. Some Potawatomi people later told LaSalle that they had seen the ship tossing in a violent storm.
You know what's funny is you're referencing Haunted Heartland, and it's up on my bookshelf right now. So if we need anything,
Yeah, it's a good one. I like that book.
totally forgot I owned it. It's a very
That's
big
right.
paranormal bookshelf, but I have it if we need anything.
Yeah, that's a good one. I recommend that book. You can
Yeah.
certainly mine that for some things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So no worries on the future. I have it. No one is sure what happened to Ligrafon. Some say the local tribe succeeded in murdering the crew and burning the ship. LaSalle was convinced that the pilot and crew sank her and made off with the goods. It is sometimes called the Holy Grail of shipwreck hunters. Many have claimed to have found it, but nothing has been confirmed yet. Frederick Stonehouse claims in his book that, quote unquote, the lightkeeper of Manitoulin Island in Lake Huron is said to have found 5 or 6 skeletons, later believed to be from the Griffin's crew.
Yeah, that's probably the most famous shipwreck ghost ship in our history.
I am both surprised and not surprised that it hasn't been found. If that makes sense.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. That's true. It could just be that all that's left are the metal bits, and you would never see that at the bottom of a lake and, construct that back into an entire ship. If all
Yeah.
you have are like anything from nails to just like decorative pieces, who would reconstruct that looking at sonar or whatever and think that's a ship?
Right. And I mean, this is 1679.
Yeah.
And if it was smashed up in a storm, timbers could be everywhere. That would be amazing if they found it. Like, oh man, how cool would that be?
That
But
would be nuts.
I do not expect it to be found.
No.
Prove
It's
me wrong,
probably
universe. Come on.
right? Yeah. Come on, shipwreck
But
hunters, let's do it. Yeah. It would be awesome, but it's really old. I don't know. That being
yeah,
said, we found Viking ships intact, so who knows?
it's true. Absolutely true. And yeah, supposedly she's seen sailing. Mostly, like the most famous part, I think, is the curse
Oh, of course, yeah.
by this man. But because everything I found, it was mostly like, here's how the curse came about, and blah blah blah. Which we have two very different stories about this curse. I think Marion Kuklo is the only one I saw talking about the serpent, and then other places that did mention it got it from her.
Hmm.
But where she got it from, I could not tell you because everything else talks about this prophet. So cursed ship, I don't know.
Maybe by two curses. Maybe there's just some words that got mixed up, and monster serpent also happens to mean prophet, or vice versa, or it was metaphor. But take that, LaSalle.
Yeah, dick.
Dick. Like
I will.
like all explorers and like
Yeah,
conquerors, you dick.
he definitely opened up a lot of Michigan, but whether that was such a great thing,
Yeah. You know.
the French were better than the English, who were better than the Americans, but still.
But still, how
Yeah,
great were any of them?
yeah. This is something that no one else has mentioned, but I just happen to think of it in putting together all of this info for this episode. It did mention it was the largest ship of its time. We will learn that being a large ship, certainly the first of your kind on the Great Lakes, probably is not going to serve you very well.
No.
You're probably gonna sink. Spoiler alert. Probably gonna sink. So that might, that honestly, that might have had something to do with it. That it was the first of its kind, and they didn't really know what they were up against yet. So yeah, easily a storm could have come up and it could have sunk. Curse, no curse.
Right.
Some of these other ones we'll talk about were also the first of their kind. And now we're talking about them because they're ghost ships. So there you are.
Right. Yeah. The anything that happens to be the first of its kind usually has a few bugs in it, we'll say.
Yeah.
As to be expected, but sometimes it's just that your phone turns off by itself, and sometimes it's that an entire ship and it's cruising to the bottom of a lake. You know, trial and error.
So next up, we have a ship that's sometimes called the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes. So also fairly famous ghost story. A 245-foot Canadian steel-hulled steamer, the SS Bannockburn, was built in Scotland in 1893. So we've jumped ahead like 300 years. Then brought across the Atlantic to ply the Great Lakes for the Montreal Transportation Company. According to author Luke Bauserman on his website, The final voyage of the Bannockburn began on November 20th, 1902. She left from Thunder Bay carrying 85,000 bushels of wheat, headed for the Sioux Locks at Sault Ste. Marie, then on to the Georgian Bay of Lake Huron. Wikipedia says that, quote, she was sighted by the captain of a passing vessel, the SS Algonquin, around noon of that day, but minutes later disappeared. The wreck of the ship has never been found, with the exception of an oar and a life preserver, and no bodies were ever recovered. Within a year of her disappearance, she acquired a reputation as a ghost ship.
An oar and a life preserver.
Yeah, how eerie is that?
Those two things together are like, they make that terrifying.
Yeah, it's a good
Here,
story.
paddle for your life. The Bannockburn actually sank once before this on October 15th, 1897. That's also the year that there was a bunch of UFO sightings in Lower Michigan, but we'll talk about that a different
Oh.
day. While traveling from Chicago, Illinois to Kingston, Ontario, quote unquote, she had struck the wing wall of lock number 17 of Welland Canal and sprung a leak, sending her to the bottom of the shallow canal, where she took on 9 feet of water before coming to rest. No lives were lost, and she was raised afterwards. That's also, according to Wikipedia, where you will find a fairly detailed report of the ship's disappearance. CottageLife.com. Interesting. What
Yep.
website is that?
It's
It's just
about
like about cottages?
dude, I found articles in the weirdest places.
I was like, just reading along, doing my thing. What? That doesn't. What?
Yeah,
Okay.
that you're gonna notice that a lot.
Okay. Cool. I was like, that doesn't make sense. That's fine. Uh, CottageLife.com reports that the ship is, quote unquote, most often sighted between Port Arthur, Michigan, and the Sioux Locks between Lakes Superior and Huron.
There's another one. I told you. GreatLakesBoating.com says that the first recorded description of the Bannockburn as a ghost ship appears in The Romance and Tragedy of the Inland Seas, chapters of Oliver Curwood's book The Great Lakes and the Vessels That Plow Them, originally published in 1909. Oliver Curwood was
I'm gonna laugh. I'm 15. That plow them.
yes.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, there are a lot of farming.
That's not what I was
with
thinking,
with
but okay.
shipping. Yeah. Oliver Curwood was a fiction writer who wanted to stir up interest in the Great Lakes by drawing parallels to better known ocean and sea voyaging. Hence, probably why the Bannockburn is called the Flying Dutchman. Things like that to make it like, hey, this is legit. These Great Lakes are legit places.
Right. Yeah. So these are actually as big as seas. I just don't want anybody to forget that. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very dangerous.
Both Luke Bowserman and a maritime blog, JC Archaeology, relate the story of another steamer, the Walter A. Hutchinson, running aground after nearly colliding with the ghost ship in a storm. This took place shortly after World War II. Check it out. It's a very dramatic story. However, JC Archaeology reports that they could find no record of a Walter A. Hutchinson operating on the Great Lakes, even if it was renamed.
That comes up quite a bit too. I did find one potential explanation for the ghost ship sightings on JC Archaeology. The blog points out the Bannockburn was a distinctive vessel for its time, but it wasn't the only vessel of its type operating on the Great Lakes during the early 1900s. The Rosemount was almost an exact sister ship, virtually identical to the Bannockburn. Perhaps there was a level of misidentification amongst sailors at the time. The Rosemount worked on the Great Lakes for 42 years. Even the Bannockburn's replacement, the Westmount, that was ordered less than a month after it sank, and did not arrive until 1903, bears resemblance to the lost ship. If you want to see a video of a potential ghost ship on Lake Superior, I found a link to one from, of all places, my father's favorite radio station, WRKR, out of Kalamazoo. So weird.
Radio stations love spooky stuff. It's where we find our best information.
They absolutely, and it's a video, so you can't even see it on air. But yeah, totally linked to that in the episode's description. It is suggested on that page that it was the Bannockburn. Why they think that, I honestly couldn't say. I guess because it's a famous ship. It's the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes.
I guess, yeah. If you had to pick one.
Yeah.
It might be that one.
It's either the Griffin or the Bannockburn.
Those are your options.
Yep.
Speaking of ships that have no history of existing, but have a great story attached, next we have the Erie Board of Trade, a 3-masted schooner that allegedly disappeared on Lake Huron in 1883. We'll just read the passage from midwesternghostsandhaunting.blogspot.com because they tell it so well.
A few days out from Cleveland, in Saginaw Bay on Lake Huron, the Erie Board of Trade had to anchor because the winds had died out. The captain set the crew busy cleaning and making repairs to the ship. He ordered a fairly new young crewman to scrape the topmasts. All of the crew had known that the rope to the bosun's chair was rather ragged and was dangerous to use. However, the captain sent the crewman up the mast in the chair anyway. Not longer after he reached the top, the rope broke and the crewman came crashing down to the deck along with the chair and rigging. He remained alive long enough only to curse the captain of the Erie Board of Trade. On the remaining 3 days of the voyage, the crew claimed to have been haunted by the ghost and of the dead crewman who tumbled to his death, uttering his curse over and over, appearing as a white form materializing on deck and then settling on the spot where the unfortunate crewman had died. The ship made port. Many crew had enough of the hauntings and left the ship. The captain remained, and the Erie Board of Trade took on its load of coal and headed back out into Lake Huron. The ship was never seen again.
As I said before, there is no record of an Erie Board of Trade, but according to the book Haunted Lakes by Frederick Stonehouse, quote unquote, there was a Chicago Board of Trade and it did have a decidedly unnatural career. Whatever that means. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
sank in 1874 in Lake Erie. Nevertheless, people still report seeing this ghost ship sailing Saginaw Bay with a full phantom crew. Episode 83 of the Great Dive Podcast, a podcast about scuba diving, is all about the Erie Board of Trade if you'd like to listen to more about this ship. It's a popular story. And maybe we replace the ropes more often, boys.
Yeah, that I've read so many versions of this story. That's the one I read is the most concise version.
Okay.
But yeah, it's in several books. It's on several blogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a famous story, even though apparently it's not true.
Even though we don't know if that ship ever existed. Also, ship names are weird, man.
They are so weird. I came
What
across so many.
Board of Trade? Isn't
Yeah.
that just a group of people that make decisions on trade? All
Yeah.
right.
There's a lot. Frederick Stonehouse's book is fantastic. He I guess wrote several books because I just read an article by him, and he mentioned having 4 books out. But
Ooh.
I read Haunted Lakes, and it's wonderful. It talks about how Finns were warlocks. That was another story I read in was it Spooky Michigan. Yeah, Finnish captains were very skilled sailors coming from like the oceans and the other seas. So
Uh-huh.
coming to the Great Lakes was like easy for them.
Right. Been
So
there, done that.
yeah, they're like, is that all you've got? So they were known as being like so good that it had to have been warlocks.
Ah, it's obviously magic.
Yeah,
Duh.
obviously. But yeah, this is a really fun book. He does his research. He tells the stories and it's really interesting, but then he also was like, yeah, I looked into it and it's totally not true, but it's a good story.
Amazing. Kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great story. It's none of it happened. That's fine.
Yeah, and this one it talks about ghost stories, superstitions, and sea serpents. So yeah, it's a fun
Ooh.
one. Highly recommend Stonehouse's his book, and I'm definitely gonna look into his other books too. This one I got out of the library, but it would probably be worth owning because it's just there's a lot of good stuff in here. If you like tall tales and spooky stories, that definitely get this one. Pick it up.
And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of the blogs that I mentioned do use him as their source, which is why I just got the book.
Yeah,
Because I was like, you're all talking about this guy. I'll just get the book and read
you
him
might
right
as
from the
well.
source. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not all of the blogs, I will say, mention that Stonehouse did this research and perhaps debunk some of these stories because that's no
Ah,
fun.
no, of course not.
So yeah, the Erie Board of Trade is a extremely popular ghost ship story on the Great Lakes, but probably didn't. I trust Stonehouse when he says it didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely go back and look through ship records and see, and port records and see, the names of ships and when they were docked and sailing. So
Yeah,
if the name isn't found anywhere, chances are it did not exist.
yeah. He has extensive endnotes and bibliographies and stuff. He cites all of his sources, and
Cool.
he's a great reference. So next we are headed to Lake Superior and the SS Hudson, whose wreck lies off the coast of Keweenaw Peninsula. She was built in 1888 in Detroit, a propeller ship that measured 288 feet. While crossing Lake Superior from Duluth, she sank on September 16th, 1901. Last year, in 2019, when the wreck was finally located, the Daily Mail reported that the night the ship sank, there had been a storm, quote, so strong it knocked out communication lines along the Keweenaw. Lighthouse keepers at Eagle River, Michigan saw a sizable twin-stacked steamer dead in the water, listing badly. The unidentified steamer suddenly rolled over and sank. 2 days later, the local newspaper reported there was no clue to the ship's identity and there was eerily no sign of wreckage. End quote. On September 20th, a fishing boat found wreckage that proved the ship indeed had sunk. I believe this is also from the article. They found 2 masts, one painted black and the other yellow, which matched the steamer Hudson. As the days flew by, more and more wreckage rose to the water's surface, including some bodies of the crew still wearing life preservers that bore the name SS Hudson. There'd been 25 crew members aboard, and she went down with all hands.
Ouch.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. Like that's one I found in several places, but
Yeah.
of all places, I found a pretty concise. The Daily Mail has a very, very good reportage, and they actually quote newspapers at the time in
Okay.
their article. So that's a neat one to check out if you're into this kind of thing.
Wow. Good job, Daily Mail. Look at you.
Yeah, weird, right? Yeah, of all places. All places to find this article, the Daily Mail.
Man, this podcast is just full of like unexpected sources.
It really is. People really like shipwrecks.
They do. It's true. And the Great Lakes are an unfortunately great place to find them.
Yeah, like I mean, how many times have we already talked about Duluth, sailing
Yeah.
from Duluth?
Yep. This was not the last sighting of the Hudson, according to multiple sources, but here we will quote from Mysterious Universe. On September 16th, 1940, a tugboat captain and his crew spotted an old, rust covered ship drifting near Keweenaw Point. On closer inspection, it was noticed that the ship was not only covered with rust, but also a strange brown slime. The captain of the tugboat sensed that the vessel was in some sort of distress and boarded it despite the ominous slime coated appearance. The captain allegedly was welcomed with a completely empty, desolate ship and made his way to the pilot house, where he discovered that the ship was not as unoccupied as he had first thought. He reportedly saw the spectral apparitions of the Hudson's captain and helmsman, who proceeded to explain to the tugboat captain that they were doomed to eternally relive the sinking of the ship every September 16th. The ghostly crew warned the terrified tugboat captain to get off, and he promptly ran for dear life, jumping straight into the water and frantically swimming for his own boat. The Hudson has allegedly been seen from time to time since, always on September 16th off of Keweenaw Point. So we're going to Keweenaw.
Yeah, we need to go back to Keweenaw, clearly. There are a lot of them up there too, because there's a stretch of land, I forget from where to where, along Lake Superior, that's known as like Shipwreck Beach or Shipwreck something.
Oh, good lord.
Yeah, there are a lot of shipwrecks. There's a lot of ships sank. The Hudson story I thought was really interesting and sad. When a lot of these went down with all hands. So
yeah.
that's why they're ghost ships. That's why they caught people's attention. I thought it was pretty cool that this one actually was found. They found the wreck, so you can go and look that up, and that was cool. Not a lot of these weren't found, but that one was very recently found, and there's quite a bit of information on it. So that's cool. If you like that kind of thing, go look it up.
I'm like on Google Maps. I went to Keweenaw Point, and I'm like scrolling in on the satellite view. I'm like, where's the shipwreck?
And when I was up
Google
there,
Earth.
it wasn't Keweenaw. We were in, I can't think of the name now. But when Greg and I were up there on vacation, and we did a shipwreck tour with a glass bottom boat, it was so cool. Though the ones you see on that one, at least the ones that we saw, they were not like everyone was saved. Basically, there were no bodies down there.
Yeah.
Greg was super creeped out. He did not enjoy that at all. But I thought it was very cool. And I was more okay with it because I knew that we weren't going to see bodies. You know, these weren't graves. These were ships that had, everyone had been saved. They got away free, and the ships are just kind of chilling down there. It was very cool. I recommend it. I totally recommend it to anyone to do the glass bottom boat tour. But,
I would love to. Yeah.
Yeah. So last we have the Western Reserve and the W.H. Gilcher. I'm going to say Gilcher. It could be Gilcher. I really don't know. They were sister ships that went down in Lake Superior and the Straits of Mackinac, respectively, in 1892. A lot of this comes from the blog History, because it's here, by Kathy Warnes. She's got a good blog. You should check her out too. I definitely suggest reading that entry in full. It's a good one. There's quite a lot of detail. Both ships were built in Ohio, the Western Reserve in 1890 and the W.H. Gilcher in 1891, and were experimental vessels with steel plate hulls. Said, first of your kind. Doesn't go well for you. But this made it possible for them to carry heavier loads. So that's why they were experimenting. So it was longer than an American football field. Both ships were also large for their era.
On August 30th, 1892, the Western Reserve ran into a storm on Lake Superior. At around 9 that evening, the mainmast crashed to the deck. Per warns, forward of the spar, a break appeared on the deck, and the break widened with the passing of each wave. The crew launched the lifeboats. One wooden boat held ship's owner Peter Minch, his family, and some crew. A metallic yawl held the rest of the 27 people aboard. The yawl capsized, and the lifeboat picked up 2 survivors. The 19 occupants of the lifeboat bailed and drifted in inky black Lake Superior for 10 hours. Within a mile of shore, a wave suddenly capsized the boat, and all but one man were drowned.
News of the wreck spread quickly. The New York Times even covered the incident under the headline, "The steamer broke in two." What a headline.
Wow, okay.
To the point.
Better than clickbait.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Done. We're done.
Steamer broke in two. Don't gotta click on it. But swift, harsh criticism led to investigations into the safety of steel ship construction. It was concluded that, per Wikipedia, the shipbuilders had improperly used brittle steel contaminated with sulfur and phosphorus, which led to metal fatigue and then structural failure.
Yeah. Don't use anything that's brittle, especially in the water.
First of its kind.
Yeah. Hey, good job, guys. They
tried. Yeah, they're trying.
8 weeks later, on October 28th, 1892, the Western Reserve's sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, left Buffalo, New York, headed for Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She ran into a storm in the Straits of Mackinac and never reached her destination. Some wreckage was found, and it was speculated that she had collided with another ship in the storm. All hands were lost.
Wikipedia tells us that these dual disasters, tragic losses of life, and the ensuing scandal, quote, led to permanent changes in the types of steel approved for use in US and Canadian shipbuilding. Even with several searches, the wreck of the Western Reserve has never been found. I don't believe the Gilcher has been found either, though no one specifically says.
Weird, okay.
Yeah, the Western Reserve has its own Wikipedia entry. I don't think the Gilcher does. It's included in the Western Reserve story because they were so closely tied.
Right. Interestingly, the changes made to American and Canadian ships did not carry over to the United Kingdom. A likely casualty of this discrepancy was none other than the RMS Titanic, which sank after striking an iceberg. As pointed out by Wikipedia, in the United States and Canada in the first half of the 20th century, lake freighters built with the improved standards for steel were bumping through Great Lakes ice floes and suffering damage, but not sinking.
Take that, UK.
Titanic, come on. Yeah. And, the lack of closing off of holes and lifeboats and everything else that was deeply wrong with the Titanic before it ever set sail.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating tie
to
this ghost story. Like, if you'd listened to the Great Lakes, maybe the Titanic would not have sunk. It would have given them a better chance anyway.
Right. Yeah. Who knows what would have actually happened? But yeah, if the UK had adopted the standards as well, I think they would have stood a slightly better chance.
Right. There is a story I actually came across kind of after putting this all together that was it Peter, or the ship's owner, Peter Minch. There is another story that floats around, and I've seen it in a couple places. I just hadn't connected it to this story until recently. Supposedly there was a guy at a rescue station had a dream that he saw a man in a top hat walking along the shore and just like gesturing wildly and was very upset. And then he wasn't a lighthouse keeper, but he was a rescue guy, whatever you call them. Mm-hmm. He woke up and roused his friends. There's somebody out there. I had a dream. And so they go out there. There's nobody there. They don't see any ships. There's a storm, but everything's fine as far as I can tell. So then they go back, and then later they find out there was a ship. It was this one. And the man that he saw in his dream, he later identifies as Peter Minch.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. And I believe Minch's, his family, his wife and his children were on that ship.
Yeah, they were.
So it was, and he was a pretty well-known guy at the time, and that's kind of why it was such a scandal, is
Hmm.
because this very well-known person and his wife and kids died with him, and that's kind of what caused the scandal.
Oof.
Fame. If you're
Fame. Yeah.
if you're gonna go down, be famous. But
Yeah, I think that's that's how life
yeah,
works. Yeah.
yeah. But that's one I've heard floated around. Usually they don't mention the name of the ship.
Mm.
It's just, but one of them mentioned his name, and I was like, wait a minute, that was the ship owner of the Western Reserve, and so I connected the dots myself. But that's a story sometimes you'll hear, is there was a guy had a dream about this ghost,
Yeah.
and then turns out, oh, the man he dreamt about was the ship's owner. Ooh. So yeah, that's an interesting connection to this story as well.
Yeah.
And of course, if that's true or not, who knows?
Oh yeah,
I,
no, I don't know, but it's a really good story.
yeah, the story of the Western Reserve and the Gilcher was interesting about how it led to all of these changes in
Yeah.
shipbuilding. It's tied to the Titanic. Like that was
Oh
just,
yeah.
yeah, that's a fun story. I like that. I'm sorry that everyone died,
Right. Yeah.
but
No, we
I
never
mean,
want to like diminish the fact that a
yeah,
bunch of people have lost their lives on these lakes.
but they were doing something no one had done before.
It's true.
He probably shouldn't have brought his family along for the ride.
Maybe not.
And then
But
for the second one, the sister ship to sink 2 months later, like, wow, that's crazy.
ooh, I'm like, oh, that's like a curse, right? Is that-
Yeah. Yeah, and after the second one sank, then everyone was like, "Okay, seriously, we need to look into this."
Yeah. All right. One is one thing, but maybe we should try. Maybe we should conduct an investigation.
But yeah, their story doesn't end there, so to speak. I think it goes without saying that both ships are still seen gliding across the waters of the Great Lakes, allegedly. Deer Park, along the shores of Lake Superior, is where you want to head to catch a glimpse of the Western Reserve. You may even hear voices and laughter coming across the water. Mackinac Island is the place to go to find the Gilcher as she passes from Huron into Lake Michigan on foggy nights.
Mackinac Island is just the place to go in general, but
It's true.
I will also happily go there to look for
Look
ghost
for
ships.
ghost ships.
Yeah.
Deer Park, I think, is known as the Shipwreck Coast. If you're into shipwrecks, that's where you go.
That and
And the Keweenaw and the
Keweenaw
Shipwreck Museum.
and the Shipwreck Museum on the other side of CUP, and
It's just Lake Superior. It's
yeah,
not a great place.
it's terrifying.
Yeah,
That's really scary. Yeah.
it's a whole song about it.
Speaking of, we are once again in Lake Superior for this next one with something a little different, a haunted shipwreck. The SS Kamloops, which is a great name, was a
Oh yeah.
lake freighter that launched in 1924 and sank during a winter storm off the coast of Isle Royale on or around December 7th, 1927. None of the 22 men and women aboard were found alive. Wikipedia reports that of the 9 bodies recovered from the Kamloops, 5 were identified and the remains shipped to next of kin. 4 remained unidentified and were buried at Thunder Bay. A collective memorial stone was placed over their gravesite in 2011.
This is where it gets a bit chilling, friends. Reading from Wikipedia, because they keep it succinct. A lot of places go on and on about this, so this is why I'm reading so much from Wikipedia. In December 1928, a trapper working at the mouth of the Agawa River, Ontario, 150 miles away from where the ship sank, found a bottled note from Alice Bettridge, an assistant stewardess in her early 20s who initially survived the sinking, and before she herself perished, wrote, "I am the last one left alive, freezing and starving to death on Isle Royale in Lake Superior. I just want Mom and Dad to know my fate." The letter was signed Al, who is dead.
Okay.
Right? I have chills now just reading that. Bettridge's parents confirmed that the handwriting matched their daughter's. Her body had already been recovered months before the note was found. She was identified by her teeth. Searchers had been sent out in December to recover any survivors, which were believed to have likely ended up on Isle Royale, but the nasty weather hampered their efforts, which were soon abandoned. The island was described as a forbidding jungle in the winter. In May of 1928, the search resumed, but for the wreck and bodies, not survivors. For an in-depth account of the sinking, there is an article on sootoday.com, SOO today.com, which we will be linking to in the episode's description. Absolutely. Lots of links for this episode.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, everybody loves shipwrecks. Off the shore of Isle Royale's northeast end is another wreck. The SS Emperor was built in 1910 and sank on June 4th, 1947. She sank quickly, killing 12 crew members, including the captain and first mate. A nearby Coast Guard cutter was able to save the remaining crew. The largely intact wreck was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1984. If you would like to read the details of the sinking, you can head over to Wikipedia and search for SS Emperor. There is also a picture of a diver next to the underwater anchor. It's a very popular diving spot. And if you're a diver and you've been here, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Another place you can read about this haunt and many of the others we have talked about in this book is Haunted Lakes by Frederick Stonehouse. Again, the online sources I found all repeat the story in Stonehouse's book, which goes as follows. In 1988, a recreational diver swam into the crew cabin where they encountered the apparition of a crew member lounging on his bunk. Another diver reported seeing a phantom crewman working in the engine room who looked at the diver for a few moments before returning to work.
Just looking over. Hey, all right.
Yeah,
I'm working. How you doing?
spooked him though.
Others have reported hearing strange noises, which we should point out is not unusual for a wreck, but also voices. And one diver heard a weird metallic voice say, "Die." The diver looked around to make sure he was alone, heard "die" again, and then, after hearing it a third time, got the heck out of there. Old sailors claimed that when passing the site, the ghost would call out to them or even climb aboard, silently going about their old duties on the new ship before vanishing or climbing back over the side and returning to the water. There is an old superstition that when a ship had previously wrecked or a wreck is salvaged and its parts used on new ships, the spirits of the old crew will reappear. This also goes for airplanes. The exact same superstition applies to them.
Oh.
Yeah, I could tell you a whole ghost story about that, but we're not. We're focused on ships.
Yeah, another time. Another time.
Another time.
Yeah, I found this is a Cornish belief as well as a Great Lakes belief, but many of the people crewing on the Great Lakes were from Cornwall,
Okay.
so they would have brought that with them. And then the Finns, with their reputation of being superb sailors and warlocks.
Oh my god, those wizards, man.
Yeah, both Haunted Lakes and Spooky Michigan, which I've mentioned a couple of times. Spooky Michigan now. Go read Spooky Michigan; it's fun.
It's good.
They both tell the tale of the Finnish captain he controlled the wind with a knotted rope, is what it was. So when the ship he captained becalmed, he would untie the knot and thereby summoning the wind
Okay.
somehow. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm with
Haunted
it.
Lakes. Yeah. One of them suggests like he would capture the wind during a storm and like tie a knot, and then when he untied the knot, it would release those winds. And then Haunted Lakes actually suggests that he sold his soul to the devil to acquire this power because that's a popular thing to do.
Calm
Um,
down.
yeah, but Spooky Michigan, they don't say. He just could do it. And in Stonehouse's book, it's probably because he's Finnish.
Right.
They're just magicians. So I feel I must point out that it was once common in such situations for sailors to whistle, throw coins overboard, or strike the mast with a knife to summon wind. So really untying knots in a rope doesn't seem that outlandish to me.
Oh no, sailors have superstitions like up and down. Like, why would a rope be
Yeah.
any different? Why is
Yeah.
that guy a wizard? But like all the
Yeah.
stuff you do is totally normal.
Yeah. And so the end of this particular folktale is that his wife is sailing with them one day, and she is appalled how untidy his cabin is. So she goes to clean his cabin, and she's, "Why are all these ropes knotted? This is ridiculous." So she unties all of the knots and releases all of the winds at the same time, and either the ship sinks or it doesn't. Depends on which version of the story you're reading.
Oh my god.
They blame all of them blame the wife.
Yeah, there's a woman on a ship.
Yeah, what I've learned from
Her
this is
fault.
don't bring your wife. Your ship's gonna sink. Um,
Don't bring your wife. Okay, so Aaron and I will never be on a ship at the same time.
I guess not.
Oh
But
well.
yeah, there's so many wonderful stories that either they're about ghost ships or just have to do with the sea in general.
Yeah.
For the Great Lakes, and it's just so much fun. I love it. And I grew up with a lot of this kind of lore, so that's why I'm super into like sailing and so forth, even though I've yet to actually sail. Even a lot of people in California thought that was weird because they're like, well, Michigan is landlocked, but like we're not. We're really not.
No, we're not. Like,
Not at all. And we have some of the most dangerous seaways in the world.
Yeah.
So, like, they're called lakes because they're fresh water, but they are no joke.
Yeah, they're not really lakes. I love that both the shipwreck, the actual physical shipwreck, can be haunted,
Yeah.
and there can be ghost ships in their entirety.
This was such a fun one to put together because there are so many different kinds of stories.
Yeah.
When I came across the haunted shipwreck, I was like, "Ooh, this is
Huh.
exciting.
Oh, this is new.
Yeah, this is fun." So I had to include them. Had to include
Oh,
that.
absolutely. And they're just being ghosts, like seeing ghosts underwater for some reason just like tickles me. That's hilarious for some reason. I don't know why. It's just seeing this apparition underwater going about his duties
Yeah.
when you're dressed up in scuba gear is such a change from being in an old decrepit building and seeing a person while you are still dressed and look like a person. I don't know what the
Yeah.
difference is for me, but it's very strange. Like, oh, ghosts can be underwater. Maybe it's the whole thing with like magic being dampened with running water that I'm like, a ghost can be underwater?
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, we have 2 haunted shipwrecks, and they're both on Isle Royale, different ends of it.
Yeah,
So you can head up there and check them out. One of them, maybe both of them actually, you can see from the surface.
that would be cool. And I've never been to Isle Royale, so
I haven't either. I've always wanted to go. I know it can be a little more of a severe environment than the main peninsulas, but
yeah, but
it looks beautiful. And the whole thing with the Kamloops, that's a great name.
Kamloops.
Kamloops. That whole story with the woman Alice Bettridge, that's like, wow, that's kind of wild. And
That's
how sad because I forget how many they estimate had actually made it to the island and survived, but it was a decent amount. But the rescuers just
yeah,
couldn't get there because winter is a forbidding jungle.
yes.
um, yeah, just nuts. It's so sad that they were alive and that she wrote this letter and threw it in a bottle and tossed it. And that was considered by many at the time to be a cruel joke. You know,
Oh,
because
yeah,
her body had already been recovered months before. Her
yeah,
family was grieving. So people thought this guy was just out to get something from them, which
right.
what he could have gotten, I don't know.
I don't know why somebody would do that.
But no, supposedly the parents did see the note and they said, "Yeah, that's absolutely her handwriting."
Al, who is dead.
Yeah. Oh man. She was the last one. She watched everyone else freeze and starve to death. I mean, God,
Oh my
how awful.
gosh. Oh, good lord.
But it's a pretty cool story, but it's also tragic because this is real. This really happened.
Right. That's there's records, there's people, there's
Yeah.
yeah, we know for a fact that this happened, and that's sad.
Yeah, we have a lot of details about this
Mhm.
one. So I haven't seen this too much mythologized, which is good because that would
Mhm.
make me really sad if it was. But it is more recent. This was the 1920s. So
Mhm.
what a story.
Oh,
I like
jeez.
that one.
Yeah, me too.
Because we do have so much information about it, and we will link to those.
We will, and I'm sure there's, and I know there's a ton more shipwrecks that we could talk about.
Yeah, these are some of the most famous ones that you see
Yeah,
written about over and over and over again.
like I have a
Um,
feeling this could be a huge multi-part series, but and maybe we'll probably come back sometime down the line, but that's still a lot.
yeah, I tried to keep it kind of chronological,
Yeah.
and it spans from the 1600s to the 1900s. So I wonder if there's anything more recent. Not in what I found, but I mean
I don't
we're
know.
still plowing those lakes.
Maybe that's what Superior is so mad about.
Just keep plowing her. She doesn't like it.
Yeah, she doesn't like it.
A lot of these did go down in Lake Huron too. I was kind of surprised, but I didn't grow up around Lake Huron, so I don't know as much about that one.
I was gonna
Um,
say I was surprised too, but it's because I've been around you who didn't grow up around Lake Huron.
right,
All of my like shipwreck knowledge comes from your side of the state.
which is a very seafaring kind of place.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, and the Sioux Locks coming through there. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It was I had a lot of fun researching this. I really, really did. I went down some rabbit holes. I was very impressed
Good.
with how much detail Wikipedia has because there are records, there's ships, there's lots of
Yeah,
records on everything.
right.
They recorded all of these things, what they were carrying, what other ships saw them, when they were last sighted. I was so impressed by how much information there is on some of these because they're
Oh
older. A
yeah.
lot of them were the 1800s, early 1900s. You can read like these long, detailed, like paragraph after paragraph of their final day. Like it's so cool.
Yeah, ships were, and I'm sure still are, I just don't know. I don't have anything to do with like the shipping world. They're seriously documented,
Yeah, every little thing.
from just like a captain's log to more other like outside sources being like, oh, I spotted that ship, I wrote it down. Like I know
Yep.
exactly where that ship was this day at this hour.
Yeah, we were watching something on the Mary Celeste the other day, and they mentioned that in the ship's log, they would typically make a note every hour on the hour. They would make a note in the ship's log. So if you can find the ship's log, you can get a pretty good idea of what the ship was going through in its last moments. And then, of course, other ships' logs. Oh, at 9 o'clock, we spotted this other ship.
Yeah.
She didn't look like she was in good shape. So yeah, it's really neat. And I did use Wikipedia as a source for a lot of these things because there are so many sources out there. And somebody clearly is a fan of shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. And they put all of that together. And it was just fascinating to read. And they're real stories. They're very detailed, real stories that are now, of course, associated with ghosts. But I loved reading them. I thought it was so interesting. So yeah, Wikipedia, great resource for ghost ships.
Who would have thought, especially in like the newest scouring of anything paranormal on Wikipedia lately, that some people have been doing. It's good
Mm,
to know that they haven't gotten to the shipwrecks yet.
yeah, I feel like that's a shame because I mean, I'm not claiming any of these ghost stories are real. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I only know what people say,
Right.
and covering that up is why. Why would you do that?
Oh yeah, there's been a group or a person or something just going through paranormal entries on Wikipedia and just like scrubbing them clean, essentially.
That's not fair. I think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
No, it's not cool in any way, shape, or form.
Because yeah, like
Anyway,
it's folklore. Why would you erase folklore?
I don't know.
It's
Probably because you have some religious slant that doesn't agree with
probably
it.
because that's a lot of this. It's part of our culture. All of these stories, all of these ships are part of our collective culture around the
Yeah.
Great Lakes that I happen to take a lot of pride in. And find endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
Hello, Telly. Telly's with us.
Hi, Tully.
She just jumped on my keyboard. She says, "Oh, I didn't know we were doing this today. Ah,
Oh, at
I'm
least
late."
one podcat has to be here. It's
That
okay,
does
Tully.
push me way away from the microphone. There we go. We'll turn sideways.
All right. Well, that's it for this particular podcast. Is there anything project wise, social media wise, we want to talk about? Other than Patreon, which we have, so go sign up for it.
Yeah, we have 2 things up on Patreon right now.
Yay,
Hoping,
too.
yay, too. Hoping to record something else. I might do another story just because this time of year is traditionally, I know it's not really part of American culture right now or US culture, but it was in European culture traditional to tell ghost stories at this time of year. It was part
Yeah.
of celebrating Christmas. It's in Shakespeare, so I keep repeating to people. And it predated Shakespeare.
It's
I
in
mean,
Shakespeare. It's in Charles Dickens. It's in it's a thing. Tell ghost stories. It's
yeah, it's
Christmas.
absolutely a thing. Was it A Winter's Tale? It's the Shakespearean piece. And they think it like the Vikings did it and the Celts probably did it too. Just that it's dark, it's getting darker. It's cold. You're
We're
gathered around the
right.
fire, whether it's
Let's
a fire outside or in your fireplace at home. Like, yeah, let's tell ghost stories. We're
let's
all,
tell stories of the past.
yeah, we're all huddled inside. What else are we gonna do, right? So I love that about this time of year that it's all ghosty, and that it used to be part of the Christmas tradition in England, especially, um, hence Charles Dickens, that you would kind of gather around the family hearth and tell ghost stories. So I'm carrying on that tradition by telling ghost stories.
Absolutely.
And there are so many. There are books filled with Christmas ghost stories from the 1900s, or from the 1800s, 19th century.
And we hope to start doing, if we get enough people in the near future, to start doing like live streams and things like that on our, what is this called? On our Discord and on Twitch possibly too, because I do have a Twitch.
Ooh.
So it would be really cool to meet up once a month, once every other month or something, and just kind of talk to each other, get to know each other, tell ghost stories ourselves, and
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing stories. I think it's wonderful.
yeah, me too.
I read a lot of memoirs. I love personal stories.
Otherwise, social media is Haunted Mitten pretty much everywhere. I'm trying to be a little bit more active on it on the Twitter, on the Tweety box, instead of just like retweeting stuff. I fall
Yeah.
into the retweet hole, so I'm hoping to put a few more of articles that I found and posted, not just that someone else
Yeah,
worked
not just
for
other
me and
people.
I posted.
Yep, I fall into that too.
Yeah. And there's a lot of really great paranormal people and paranormal resources on Twitter
Yeah,
that are very
absolutely.
active and all know each other and all talk to each other and share stories and share articles and all that really fun stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll try to be a little bit more active on that, especially if we go into another shutdown and I have weeks upon weeks to myself again.
Yeah, my work just closed even more to the public because we kept saying, "Well, we're
Yeah.
not open to the public," except we were because we were fulfilling holds and things, but now we're not
Right.
even doing that, and
Yeah.
I am entirely working from home. I'll probably be doing that after we're done recording.
Yay.
Um, but one of the things I get to do is write about the UFOs in the 1960s in Michigan, so yeah!
Heck yeah. We're going to
That's
talk about that later.
yeah, we're definitely Michigan has such a wonderful history with UFOs. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
That easily we can make an episode about that.
Yeah. And like I said, there was a whole string of sightings in 1897. It was the airship sightings.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. Yes, yes, the
I've
airships.
written actual papers on it. I wish that I could find those because those have some great actual academic sources. Because college, I don't know
Mhm.
where any of those are though. So unfortunately, I will have to go back and find all of those resources again. I think they are at least 2 or 3 laptops ago, so I don't
Oh,
have them at all.
yep.
Unfortunate, but yeah, look that up too because that's really we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we are definitely doing one on UFOs.
Oh yeah. At least there's
Yeah.
a lot to talk about, and I just love UFOs and like cryptozoology too. So I'm throwing that into the podcast because I can.
Yeah, and I do I think there's a lot of overlap. I think some of these things could be maybe explaining each other.
For sure. Other than that, my social media personally is K Gray Writes, just the letter K and then GRAY and then writes as in when you write stuff down. And that's me everywhere except I hate Facebook, so I don't go on it, but I love Instagram and I love Twitter, so I will always be there.
Yep, and I am at Krista K. Coburn. I'll spell that out for you. CRYSTAKCOBURN. And again, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I
Yeah.
have been getting more people reaching out to me on Facebook lately. I am on there. I run some other Facebooks for people, so
Yeah.
I'm on there at least for that. And then my private one, but even that's been kind of
Eh,
I share a
yeah,
lot of articles.
pretty
But I
much.
do
Yeah.
that in my Twitter and professional Facebook too.
And then our podcast email, if you want to send us anything, we love hearing personal stories. We love to get ideas for the podcast, ideas for the Patreon. We are open to everything. It is just contact hauntedmitten@gmail.com. So super easy. Send us stuff. I love getting mail. That's not just
Especially
like an ad.
right. Especially if any divers out there. That I
Yeah.
thought
Tell
was
us about it.
so interesting. And the diving podcast I found that talked about the haunted wreck. That was cool.
I was like, oh my God, there's a diving podcast. Then I went, of course there's a diving podcast.
Yeah. I think that might have been like a Halloween episode or something. I can't remember. But like
That's so cool.
that's how pervasive these stories are. Like that
Yeah.
cottage magazine and sailing magazines. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just on, ghost sites, haunted sites. In fact, I didn't find much on too many ghost sites. So these
Yeah.
stories are beloved and widespread throughout definitely Michigan and probably the Great Lakes in general.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks to Eric Honke for cleaning up our podcast and taking out animal noises from my insane apartment. He's great. He's open for work if you want to get in contact with him. Get in contact with us, and we would be happy to hook you up. Otherwise, we'll see you in 2 weeks with another episode of Haunted Mitten. And as always, happy haunting.